to everyone. Seems like we are already 39. That's pretty impressive. Thank you for taking part. Everybody who's here now, you're most welcome. I should mention that we will record this this webinar, so we will make, I guess we'll call it a short video, so that you can, and we will share it with all of you if you give us our email, your email address in the last session, and we will also try to send it out on different social media, LinkedIn, and so on. So if you don't like that, tell us afterwards. We'll try to cut you out, but otherwise, we hope you're just okay with that. We will start now. Digitalization of district heating. We have Alvi moderating today. Not that much. I'll leave it to the speakers to give some excellent presentations. If you have a question, raise a hand or chat something, and I will try to include that in your in my questions to the speakers. And later on, you also have the opportunity to ask questions directly to the speakers. But let's move forward. Well, nice picture of all of us here today. You'll have Sten Schelle. He's head of product management from Kamstrup. He will talk about challenged by complexity, the future of district heating. Then Philippa Nuttall, who is editor-in-chief from Foresight. What now for district heating? As you see, we are looking very much into the future. Tom Deed, fantastic manager of distribution from Viborg District Heating Company. Worked a lot with digitalization. We'll speak about digitalization, consumer level and production level. And finally, Alessandro Povacchi, head of the DHC Plus technology platform from Euroheat and Power, will give us an insight in what is actually happening in the EU in both today, but also what is his input on what will happen in the future. Okay, enough said from me. I think we will hand over the presentations to the first speaker, and that is Sten Schelle. You have a very nice picture of him right here. And Sten, unmute your microphone, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Yes, hello everyone. I would like to give a few perspectives here from my side. And let's just check here. Just press the next slide. Sorry. I think that that we can most likely all agree that district heating is one of the keys to decarbonize the heating of buildings. In the world, but especially in Europe, where 40% of our total energy consumption goes to heating of buildings. That's a big challenge, and one of the ways.
Sten, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you speak more directly into your microphone, maybe?
I can try. Yes.
We have a lot of comments. Now you're good.
Better?
Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, I think we can agree, as I said, that the district heating really is a key technology for this decarbonization of our heating of buildings. And in order to let's say fulfill this role, then we need district heating which is more efficient and fully optimized to support this green transition. And first of all, we of course need to switch to renewable energy sources, but we also need to save energy, because otherwise we cannot make this green transition affordable. And the greenest kilowatt hour of energy is still the kilowatt hour of energy not being used. So all in all, you can say that the challenges for the district heating is to become more sustainable, to become more efficient, and to become more profitable and competitive, not at least, because this is really one of the keys to make it happen. When it comes to efficiency, it's a lot about lowering temperatures in our district heating systems, and it's about improving heat installations. And then in terms of profitability and competitiveness, we need to look into both the lower operational cost and also into improving the investment aspects of district heating. So we are moving into a world of complexity, going towards the fourth generation district heating. And normally when we don't know exactly how to deal with this, the answer would be that we just need digitalization and smarter control. Then we can handle more or less everything. And yeah, we believe, of course, also in this from a campus perspective, and this is what I would like to highlight a little bit in my introduction here. Because we believe that we are in the start of a digital revolution, simply because we cannot optimize what we do not measure. And we are in a situation where we get more and more information about what goes on in the buildings and the end users. Information which we have for many years been using for the basic billing purposes, which is important because I mean it's the basic revenue stream and it creates the trust and the transparency in district heating. But the more data we have, the more value we can also create, both in terms of improving the daily operations, the investments in district heating, but certainly also in terms of making district heating an attractive and competitive product to the end users. But data alone will not do it. We need, of course, also to have the tools. And if we look into the digital value chain, so to speak, then we have the meters, we can communicate with our meters, we can collect data. But what we need now is the tools to actually harvest on some of the digital things here, and this is what we are targeting a lot from Kampstrup side at the moment, to not only generate and collect and share the data, but also to actually invest and make the tools that can turn this data into real knowledge. And then it's of course very interesting what happens on the European perspective. Whereas, yeah, actually Friday last week it was a 1 year, a countdown started until all heat meters in Europe must be remotely readable. It's stated in the new Energy Efficiency Directive in the Clean Energy Package. And all existing meters must be upgraded before 1st of January 2027. So this will create a push to actually start to remote read and collect data from all district heating customers, which again will fuel this this whole digitalization process. And this is one of our messages here, that now we have these new requirements in place. They tell that data will have to be shared on a monthly basis with end users, but this will also give the opportunity to take the next step and go full into some of all the new digital possibilities. And just to tell that district heating is not only buzz, it's actually also good business. And we have several of our customers which has already moved quite far along the digital journey. One example here is a middle-sized Danish district heating utility called Assens, which based on working with digitalization, smart meters, have actually in a well-functioning system achieved to lower the forward temperature by 6 to 8 degrees. They have removed more than 100 unnecessary bypasses in their distribution network. They have by that also cut down the heat loss in the distribution network by 12%, and the total production by 2.5%. And this was actually with the basis of a well-functioning system. And they also tell that they have not harvested everything yet. So there is a quite big potential out there for even further improvements. And our perspective to this is that we actually already have the sensors out there. We don't need to go out and install a lot of extra equipment. We have temperature sensors, flow sensors in every connected building to the district heating network. And based on that data, we can put that we can put that data into play, and then we can start to explore what we can tell not only about the building itself and the consumer, but certainly also upstream into the distribution network and into the way we maintain and plan our district heating systems. So basically, we believe that, or we have already proved to a very large extent, that based on data we can tell a lot, not only what happens in the building, as I said, but in the entire system. And I think this is a very important topic when discussing digitalization, that this is not just only something for the end user. It's not just about making a smart app or something to the consumer. Digitalization will affect all the parts of the district heating value chain, from production, distribution, to buildings, to the consumer consumption aspects, and to how we design and plan our systems. So it will change the entire way we handle district heating systems. And one of the things we have highlighted on this slide is where we have already proved that digitalization can make an impact, similar to what we saw from the Athens case, and I'm sure similar also to what Tom from Viborg will tell us a little bit later. Yes, this was the introduction from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Sten. You're almost welcome to ask questions. You can do that in the chat. I have a short comment for you, Sten, and maybe you can also elaborate a little bit on that. First, maybe not the Athens case, but another case. What was the time of return on investment? How long time from all the investment, maybe including man hours and so on? When did it show profitable?
I think Athens said 4 to 5 years. Okay. In their case.
And do you think that is a normal time frame?
Yeah, I would think so. Yes, of course, it could be interesting to hear similar from Tom, but yes, I would certainly say that, and especially, or actually, I would think that in many cases it could be even faster, because this was actually a system where they have already done quite a few improvements. And I think what we see in many cases is that normally there is a lot of low-hanging fruits to take care of immediately. So I would actually expect an even faster return.
Good, because I find that is really, I think that is really interesting, because no matter how big or large, we haven't discussed that, and it's also, of course, very difficult to discuss that. But the fact that we actually have investment time horizons that are down to 4 or 5 years makes these investment into metering and tools and all that really competitive to other investments that a district heating company should do. But okay, thank you, Sten. Now we will. Alan asked you, Sten, how many district heating networks in Denmark have digitalized their system? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, quite a lot. I mean, with the new directives coming up, we have, of course, looked into Denmark, and I think the fact is that around 90-95% of all meters in Denmark are either already delivering frequent data or can be upgraded to do it. So these new requirements on remote reading will not have that big impact in Denmark, and maybe also in Sweden and Finland. But then there are other countries where the rate of remote reading is somewhat lower. But I would say that more or less every district heating utility in Denmark has gone quite a long way with digitalization and has implemented full automatic meter reading.
Now, thank you, Sten. And Arne Jan, we will leave your comment and questions to the more open chat later on, because at the end there will be open chat with everyone, all the speakers will be there. I hope that you're okay with that, Arne Jan. Next speaker we will have up is Philippa Nuttall, Editor-in-Chief from Foresight. We have a much better picture of her right here. What's now for district heating? And give me a second. There you go. Remember to unmute your phone and then go ahead, please.
Hi, yep, oh good. Hi, everybody. So perhaps just to start with, I'd like to thank Camstruck for inviting me to join the panel. For those of you who don't know Foresight, we're a digital media that you can find at foresightdk.com, and we cover the solutions and barriers to the transition to a clean energy economy. We also publish 2 magazines a year, and the one before last looked at decarbonising the heating and cooling sector. But I'd also just like to make it clear that I'm sort of here today to ask some difficult journalistic questions, and the specialists are the rest of the panel, so don't look to me for any technical details. So to start with, I'd just like to sort of set the ground, which I think you know what we're all discussing, but I think it needs to be made clear. Heating and cooling represents over half of EU energy consumption, which is worth more than 500 million tonnes of oil equivalent each year. And in Europe, 84% of heating and cooling is still generated from fossil fuels, with only 16% from renewable energy. And the sector also accounts for 68% of gas imports. So this clearly needs to change if we're going to prevent global warming from breaching the threshold set out in the Paris Climate Agreement, but also if the EU is going to achieve its goal of net zero emissions by 2050. Research shows, or seems to show, that we have the means to decarbonise energy for heating and cooling, and for many, a massive rollout of district heating is seen as key to this, not just for decarbonising the heating and cooling systems, but also to help balance the renewable power systems and to achieve decarbonisation across the board. As many of you already know, the Heat Roadmap Europe strategy, an EU-funded initiative, maps and modelled the energy systems of the 14 European countries using most heat in Europe, and in their final report published earlier this year, concluded that using only proven and market available technologies, it is possible to combine end-use savings with heat pumps and district heating and cooling, using excess heat, efficiency and renewable sources to stay within the 1.5 to 2 degree global temperature change threshold. So we think we can do this. And for you, as Steen has just said, district heating, there's a significant place in all this, and it's basically a given. It's not something that you're questioning. But I would argue that when I speak to people outside the district heating community, that this kind of acceptation of the role of district heating is less perhaps enthusiastic. And it depends very much on the countries and that I speak to, the people in different countries I speak to. In Scandinavia, obviously, district heating is accepted as a norm. And as most of you know, nearly 2/3 of Danish homes are heated through district heating. But for members of the public and also policymakers in other countries, this isn't so obvious. I have lots of people, when you speak to them about district heating, especially people over the age of 40, 50, who still link it to communism, inefficient collective heating, and people and policymakers now, I think the feeling is that we need to do something for the climate, but people also want to be comfortable and warm, and I don't think as many people are convinced that district heating is really necessarily a good, modern and efficient solution, and people want to see that we're moving forward and not looking backwards. So that's, sorry?
Philippa?
Yeah.
I'll give you 2 more minutes if you can slow down the speed
I'll
of
slow
your
down,
speech
sorry.
a little bit. Is that okay?
That's fine. Sorry, I apologize.
You are really fast.
Sorry.
Important and fast.
Sorry,
Okay,
sorry.
Ahead,
I will slow down. I will slow down. So, despite this reticence and the sort of not necessarily everybody seeing district heating as a key solution, change is happening. Countries and cities in Europe and elsewhere in the world are seeing district heating as a solution to decarbonising energy systems, encouraged by, for example, the conclusions of the Heat Roadmap Europe strategy that I mentioned earlier. And I think also work by Euroheat and Power, which I'm sure Alessandro is going to mention later, makes this very clear. And I'm sure he'll draw attention to the excellent map that his organisation has produced, which shows which cities are leading on this development in Europe. And Euroheat and Power also recently committed to fully decarbonise its members' district heating networks by 2050. So there is a change of mentality. But for this to really happen and for district heating to play a role, and which is obviously part of the aim of this webinar, district heating needs to be brought into the 21st century. So this doesn't mean new or extended networks. They need to be decarbonised, and we need to use modern technologies. So digitalisation is clearly a key part of this. and also see the value of district heating and sell the value of district heating as part of the wider energy transition through sector coupling, and not just be focused on district heating per se. Euroheat published a digital roadmap in July, which said that traditionally electricity, heat and cold, transport and industry are treated as individual sectors. And district heating and cooling can be the backbone of local energy transitions because of their sector coupling abilities. But I think this is something that needs to be sold much more to policymakers and the public. I think this awareness is starting to happen. The European Commission President-elect Ursula von der Leyen, in her mission letter to the Energy Commissioner-designate Kadri Simpson, tasked her to look at how to facilitate the smart integration of the electricity, heating, transport and industry sectors. So clearly there is this sort of greater role for district heating, which is out there. And then the topic for my talk was to kind of how to make this vision a reality. I don't have the answers, you have the answers to this, but I think my slides more about the questions that perhaps you need to answer and to bring out into the public sphere a lot more than is happening at the moment. To make very clear what you as an industry need to make your vision reality. So where are the gaps? We're talking about regulation, finance, technology, R&D. Stein mentioned financing, for example, in terms of investments. You know, what are the real returns on investments, both in terms of district heating systems, but also the various parts of making a modern connected district heating network. Regulation, you know, do we have the regulation now in Europe, or do we need more or different regulation at either a pan-European level, a national or a local level, or is it merely a case of implementation? And also it's quite interesting in terms of the regulation that we need, I think. I mean, do we need regulation that's actually supporting modern district heating systems, or more regulation which is actually pushing fossil fuels out? So, for example, a ban on fossil fuel boilers, and where you think the pressure points are. And then I think in terms of Stein mentioned it as well, digitalisation, there's also the question of data. I mean, digitalisation is clearly a buzzword at the moment in every sector. Every conference you go to, somebody mentions digitalisation. But I think it really needs explaining what the role is of digitalisation in terms of the district heating system and how it helps decarbonise the systems and is part of that wider energy transition. So yeah, there's the question of data, but also I wanted to reference a report which was published at the end of September by the International Telecommunication Union, which, for those of anybody who doesn't know, is a UN body based in Geneva. And the report's called Turning Digital Technology Innovation into Climate Action. And it very clearly underlines the double-edged impact of digital technologies on climate change. So there's obviously this massive potential advantages of greater interconnectedness and the Internet of Things. But it also says that it estimates that by 2025, the communications industry could be using 20% of the world's electricity. And this figure globally translates into an estimated 14% of emissions, which would surpass current emissions from aviation and shipping sectors. And these figures include digital technologies such as smart meters and others which are related to renewables. So the word efficiency and how digitalisation is actually overall used for the greater good, so we're decarbonising the whole sector, seems something that's very important to emphasise. And then I wanted to finish on a bit of a flippant slide, but there's no basic, it's a very basic issue, but you can't get around the fact that digging up streets for district heating is a very messy business. I live in Brussels, whereby every time they want to change a couple of pipes, the streets are open for months and months at a time. So how do you win over local residents and councils to explain that district heating, especially in urban areas, is a good solution for decarbonising our heating and cooling systems? I mean, we hear it time and time again in Brussels at the moment that from the gas lobby that if existing gas networks are there, we can just, you know, it's quicker and cheaper and much better for everybody to pump some hydrogen in, and that green hydrogen will come. So I think digitisation is very important, but also just communication in a traditional sense of you're all extremely good engineers and very good at what you do, but also explaining to the public and policymakers really what district heating can do and why it is a clear solution. I mean, Steen said, you know, for district heating, there's a good business case for it, but it's not very often we hear that kind of language around district heating. So I think in terms of the future, there's the actual engineering and the potential, but then there's also a kind of massive PR campaign that probably needs to happen around it to make sure that your sector is part of the solution for the future. And that's me finished.
Okay, Philippa, thank you very much. I won't ask you a lot of questions because you said so many good things. We can save that for the panel debate. I'll just comment on one thing, that it's really interesting that getting a completely different product into people's home, district heating, I mean, it's fossil free, it's green, it's renewable, it's easy to change. People will oppose sticking up the streets. But if you knock the door and tell them, if we don't open up the streets, your basement will be flooded, then they're all happy. It's just two different products, and we should actually use the same kind of really I can't say that word. Sorry. You use the same kind of hard language, saying, well, if you don't, something else will happen. Well, thank you very much to Philippa. Next online is Tom. You should have a picture of him right here, so you can see what he looks like. Tom, digitalization. You have actually done most of this, and you look at it in very many different ways. Go ahead, Tom. Give us a 10-minute on that. And ask Tom questions through the chat during this one if you have any. I'll collect them and ask them from my place, okay? Tom, your turn.
Thank you, Morten, and thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Tom, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Viborg District Heating. I've been here since 2004 and been working on efficiency of the distribution grid and the customer substations since I started. Just a few numbers on how Viborg District Heating is. The production is on natural gas, and there's a CHP, but also boilers. The production company is municipality owned, and together with the municipality owned production company, we look into changing the production into heat pumps based on either outside air or excess heat from a large data center. Viborg District Heating is a consumer owned company that buy all our heat from the production company, and we buy 288,000 megawatt hours a year and distribute it into our 345 kilometers of pipes into our 9,550 delivery points of meters, where every meter can serve more than one end customer. We heat up the 2.3 million square meters, and the loss is around 57,000 megawatt hours, or just below 20%. Digitalization in Viborg has started in different levels and in different times, but mainly in these three levels: the production level with the pumps, distribution level with the pipes, and consumer levels with the substations. And now we also see a new level where we begin to work into the buildings in the radiator systems and the domestic hot water circulation systems. On the next slides, I'll try to show the history in Viborg. I try to make these graphs where this is the production level, where I think I can show you here, maybe. Don't know if you can see an arrow, but on the axis up here, I show how digital we have become, how remote access we have, and how automated process we have. And then the dots on the line is how often we get data from these different digitalization process, where when it's green, then we get data almost all the time. And in this production level, we started already in 1980, where we got our first SCADA system, where we could see the data and make reports on how thing is running. We changed the system a few times over the years, and in 2000 we got our first remote access to this SCADA system by a laptop. And this remoteness has gotten better and better, so that we today can access and control the district heating through an iPhone or an iPad from home. In 2007, we got an automated process with the supply temperature that used the outside temperature to set the supply temperature. And this has gotten more and more features like a weather forecast, add-on temperature based on the flow, add-on temperature based on the time of the day, so that we can compensate before the peak hours. And in 2017, we installed a hydraulic system called Thermis to control this supply temperature based on a load forecast and then a calculation of the network temperatures in the distribution grid. This temperature automation has also been very feasible. We reduced our temperatures from around 95 to today around 60 degrees in supply temperature. The pressure control, we also made more automated and based on points and pumps in the network. And we see that in the future, we expect the process to be more automated based on different feedbacks from both the grid and the end consumers. Another picture here from the distribution level, where I try to make the same axis and the points. On the distribution level, we also started quite early. In 1990, we began to digitalize our drawings into AutoCAD. And in 1998, we started putting data into Access database so that we could make reports on pipe age, heat loss, pipe breaches, and so on. So we made our first renovation plan based on those data. In 2005, we merged the two systems into a geographical information system called GIS, so that the data and the overview was in the same system. At the same time, we started getting the pipes GPS documented by a surveyor. And there also came a national rule at that time on a national database with the pipes called LEA, so that an entrepreneur could see that there was pipes in the ground before digging and get a drawing. In 2015, we got a WebGIS system so that our pipes got accessible from the field as well. And at the same time, we got AutoLEA so that we didn't have to send these drawings to the entrepreneurs, but got the process automated instead. In 2014, we started a leak detection systems where we manually could check pipes for leakages. Today, the process is made more automated so that we don't have to wait a whole year to see if anyone has dig into our pipes, but to get a daily text if something has changed. We now also started to change the old circulation loops at the critical points in the network. Not that we have many, but we have around 25 points. And we now have an automated valve from Spacer that sends data and temperature, temperature and pressure back home, and we can also change the setting remotely. In the future, we expect more processes to be more automated. We also expect our guys, own guys to GPS document the pipes themselves and put them into the system, and a new WebGIS where we can change and something that has changed in the system directly into our GIS solution. At the consumer level, we had the first remote readable meters in 2000. We have always had meters, but the first one that was remote readable was in 2000, where the data of average supply and return was used to a new moderation tariff where the customers needed to lower their return temperature. At this time, reading was 4 to 12 times a year, depending on the size of the consumers. The consumers could also see their data online at this point. The data frequency has gotten closer and closer, and in 2015 we started having daily readings and found out that we could use those data to more than just showing it online and the billing, but we could also get a lot closer to telling the consumer if something is wrong in his system and what to do about it. We also made the process when we have customers that move out of their homes, then when we have these daily readings, then we can make a more automated process in the moving and new customers, since we don't have to wait for this manual reading. The daily data has also been shown in a new app with graphs and curves, and this system was built out with a feedback possibility so that the customer is told as soon as something is wrong in his system, so that he can act on it quickly. In 2017, we started to rent out substations to our customers, and those installations we connected to the internet so that we can change settings and log the data in these in these systems as well on an online system from Danfoss. In the future, we see that we can use meters to shut off installations when the customer doesn't pay, and we also begin to send customer data into our SCADA systems so that we can use the data in here. Then a few extra future thoughts on production levels. We see that we need to integrate the municipality-owned production and the distribution so that we can make better forecast model to steer when to start the production and the heat pumps. But we also see that to get the customer's installation to a lower return temperature, we need to get further into these installations. This winter, we will test if we can use data from cost allocator systems on the radiators to optimize radiator return temperatures. And we are already testing the use of sensors at the end of the system in radiators system and domestic hot water systems to optimize secondary supply temperature and the differential pressure. When we get the rental units in the larger installations at larger customers, then we would also like to see if we can make peak shavings a reality so that they don't use all their heat in the peak hours of the day. And then, of course, we expect companies like Kamstrup to develop new things that we can use as well. That was the word from me.
Thank you very much, Tom. Sten, you might as well prepare for that. I'll ask you, what are you going to invent for Tom in the future? You don't have to answer it now, but in a second, it's when we have the panel debate. Not many questions from my side, and not anyone on the chat. Tom, there's a lot of questions for you in the panel. Let's continue for the next presentation. That is Alessandro from DHC Plus. Here we have a nice picture of him. Are you ready, Alessandro? You're welcome
yes.
to start now. Go ahead, please.
Hello, thank you very much for the invitation. So what I'd like to tell you a little bit about is what's going on in Brussels, what to expect, and also how we see as a sector association, how we see digitalization to actually shape the sector. I'll do switch slide. I'm trying to. Okay, yes. So first of all, in 2018, I guess you know that there was a big change in the legislations. So what is called the Clean Energy Package. Well, this is the title is not entirely correct because the real title is Clean Energy for All Europeans. And for all Europeans, actually, what it was meant was. I still have problems with to move. Was meant for all consumers and for all customers. So really, the changes that were made were meant to include the citizens, the consumers, the customers into the energy game. So I'll try to give you some examples. From a certain point of view, there was an offer, you may say, from the side of the Commission. They actually were quite keen to promote district heating and more in general the share of renewable energy for heating and cooling. So there are provisions that helps waste heat and in general promote annual increase of heating and cooling. At the same time, the district heating and cooling sector is asked to be more transparent and to provide more information to consumers on, for example, example, on the fuel mix, on the CO2 emissions, and other info. And for example, the customers have the right to disconnect from the district heating network if, let's say, if they are not happy with it, and also if the district heating network is not efficient. In this, what you see here is also the Energy Efficiency Directive that it really gives a push to the consumer. What we actually expect for the very near future is that what you see here is the new face of the Commission, and de facto we hear a lot about we hear a lot of talks about the European Green Deal, and the energy will be apparently the very first priority of the new Commission. And the second, also interesting, that the second biggest priority will be digitalization. And this is, if energy, let's say, was pretty high on the agenda already, digitalization was not that high, frankly, with you. So and so this is, I suppose that the years to come will be very interesting, and definitely district heating has a role to play in all this. So what more concretely you can expect in terms of policy and also possibly funding from the EU is that to see a lot of push toward integrated solutions and toward sector coupling, to use digitalizations as an enabler of sustainable actions, and also to an enabler of engagement of citizens, and in order to have more fair climate policies and more engagement directly by the citizens. So this is back to actually to the work that we did in the AC Plus and in European Power. A couple of years ago, we faced the situations where everybody was talking about digitalization, but let's say there was not a coherent framework, and people were sometimes talking about that on the production side, on the smart meter. So let's say the overall conversation was a bit scattered. So what we tried to do with our members is to categorize the whole discussions, and to see what you see here is that what are the main challenges and the main barriers for the production, distribution, the building level, and all the other levels that you see in the slide. And for each of them, we try to identify, as I said, the barriers, the challenges, and what to expect. What will be the impact for the industry. Again, this slide was already discussed by other speakers, so I will move on. I just want to tell you more a couple of concrete examples. What you see here is the Dalkia Smart Building Nanterre case, very close to Paris, and is a new pilot case that we visited during our summer school. And it was actually very interesting to see that, for example, they have 5 different sources, 5 different renewable sources that they use in a single district. And the fact that they use so many different sources in a limited space makes digitalization necessary. Let's say that it would not be possible without a very sophisticated way to handle and optimize the sources. So in our view, let's say, we see the digitalization as a key enabler for the sector coupling, as Philippa was saying, this is really a driver and something that the Commission is putting a lot of emphasis on. So digitalization will become much more, let's say, political in this sense. From a more technical point of view, we see that in Europe there is still a need to business models and tariffs to evolve, so to include more customers and more the demand side management. We see that sometimes network operators don't have the power to operate the substations themselves. So this is like more, let's say, a technical, physical barrier to the general optimizations. And then I wanted basically to conclude, to bring your attention to a project that is just finished, but that we were a partner of. It's called Storm, and it was our de facto very first project on digital solutions. The Storm controller is as a controller based on self-learning algorithms, and it helps the forecasting, the planning, and dispatching of heating and cooling. What we see by the end of the project is that the peak heat reduction test in the Swedish demonstrator site led to a long-term peak heat reduction of almost 13% on an average, compared to a scenario where the storm controller is not active. And also, what you see there as the market interaction strategy, actually we mean a strategy that uses both charging and discharging capabilities to adapt to a sector of electricity spot prices. So again, we are back to the sector coupling discussion. And so this strategy resulted in a 50% reduction in the electricity purchase price, and an overall electricity procurement cost reduction by 6%. So, and of course, leading to CO2 emissions reductions. So I just also wanted to flag that actually next week we have a workshop that is part of a new project that we are part of together with our members, called the Tempo Project. Will be a meeting in Brescia, and we will continue the discussion on digitalization that is very much, let's say, part of our priorities. So actually, if you're interested, you can still join us there to continue the discussion. And that's it. Thank you.
Alessandro, thank you very much. If you later on sign up for receiving more information about this webinar, I will include an article from our magazine Hot Cool, where the Storm project is well described. It's a nice little article. I think you can all benefit from reading a bit about that. Let's continue from here straight into the panel discussion, and we invite all our panelists. Here they are. Lined up for you in nice lounge chairs to comment. Sten, I think it was you, Sten, who said something about complexity, or maybe it was Philippa. Tom, you showed us that you actually have fairly complex system, but you have kind of staged it on going from one step to the other, and you work with these three layers. And I'm not saying it's not complex, but you made it, at least you made it very straightforward, so to say. So, Tom, where are the pitfalls in this complexity? Where is it you have to be really careful on what you do and when you do it and so on?
Well, when we begin to have the data density that we have now, where we have daily values and is beginning to see hourly values or even online values, then of course the complexity begins to be harder to see when it's only us colleagues that look at the data. And I can see that the system Kamstrup has developed, where they use data to try to analyze where is the weakest point in the system, and where do we maybe have circulation that we haven't registered and stuff like that. I think we can use that a lot in the future. Up till now, I think we have worked with this in so long time that we kind of made our own consumption expectation to what the system must do. But if we want to go further down and try to make sure that every system at the customers is working as well, then we need to have systems that tell us what to do and when to do it.
Okay, thank you, Tom. One more question for you, Tom. You mentioned that now you, as a district heating company, not only go from the valve behind the wall, you also go in and install heat interface units and take over full control of them, or maybe not full control, but at least a fair deal of the control. And then you said, I never heard that before, that you also want to work with people's radiators. You go all the way into the home and support that. Could you give us a few more comments on that? And also, and that will come to a question to all of you afterwards, where the personal data protection on that?
Yes. The reason we do this is because we see that if we want to have a very effective production system when we install the large heat pumps, then we need to have a return temperature that is lower than today. Today it's around 40 degrees, or maybe in some times of year a bit lower, but we really need to go under 35 degrees to get really effective. And we have then installed the customer installations to try and see how low can we get. And in summer times we get really low, below 30 degrees. But in winter time we can see that the radiators still sets return temperatures in these systems. So in one family houses, we just go out and try to find out which radiators is their problem with. But in larger installation, that is a hard process to do, because some of the people that has an apartment won't let us in when we knock on the door. Therefore, we need to see if we somehow, by having sensors in the systems, can go lower on the supply temperature and then also the return temperature, so that we get a return temperature that is lower than it is today. And right now it's a test where we test, I think, 3 different larger apartment buildings where we have installed some sensors to try and make it more efficient. This winter we will also try another one where we actually go in and see the heat allocators on the radiators, to see if you can use those data, also to see if the people who rent the apartment doesn't use all the radiators at the same time. Then there's a possibility to make it more efficient if we tell them that they need to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. From the rest of the panel, any comments on the data protection in these digitalizations time? Steen, maybe first?
Yeah, one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, I know.
For sure, this is quite important, and even though that you could see it as something difficult and hard to figure out, then it's very important for progressing with the digitalization. We have addressed this issue in Brussels with the Commission and also with the Danish authorities. In Denmark, we have got an official position that utilities are allowed to use smart meter data for optimization, even without consent from the end user. Of course, as long as it is being protected accordingly and is not being disclosed to commercial third party. I think the situation is still very not clear in many of the other member states, and this is something we are trying to address also together with the policy people in Euro Heat and Power. If we can copy
Go ahead.
the the Danish position to the other countries.
That leads straight to you, Alexander. What is the next step? And Philippa, right after, I'll ask you. You had so many comments on the customer and communication. Maybe you can comment on data protection after Alexander. Alexander, go ahead, please.
I think already Sten presented quite nicely. The position of Denmark is actually quite fairly balanced in our view. So it depends now. This is more a question of the different member states, how they interpret the GDPR rules. But of course, when we are talking about, like delivering the renewable energy, yes, we of course is important the privacy aspect, but it needs to be balanced toward an acceleration and rollout of the digital system. So I think so far the Danish case has provided a very sensible response. So we see that as a good example for the other member states.
And you, Philippa?
I think
Germany.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, I'll go first. In some countries like Germany, even getting access to a person's email address, they don't even hand out business cards anymore. They're really, really, really protective. So, but your turn. Go ahead, please, Philippa.
Yeah, I think Alessandro has given the kind of answer that I would have given. If we have a good example in a country such as Denmark, then those examples need to be shared throughout Europe and ways need to be found to make this good practice. And obviously different member states have different ideas, and Germany is clearly much more private than other countries and very protective of its data. But I think it's this idea of best practice that we don't need to keep reinventing the wheel, that we can reassure either policymakers or the public that things work in certain countries, and then how do you make that work in other countries? And so I think Alessandro kind of gave a good answer.
Okay, thank you very much. I promised myself that we will end before 2 o'clock, and there's still 4 minutes, so we have 3 minutes left. Each of you, let's start with you, Sten, then Philippa, then Tom, then Alessandra. We all talk about, it's been a pleasure moderating because you have said so many fine things. What is the next thing somebody should do to move digitalization forward with the aim of becoming renewable, with the aim of having more district heating and so on? What is the single small thing maybe, but important you can see, and do it fast and quick? Sten?
Yes, first of all, I think we need more people like Tom that actually moves into this, tries things out, and really puts digitalization on the agenda, and not as afraid about using the new tools. That's one very important aspect. And then I think the other important aspect is that we as a manufacturer also provide the right tools to make it scalable, because that's a big effort for Tom to, when he gets more data, to use it for all his installation and not only a few. So we have to take responsibility and make scalable tools for the district energy providers.
Thank you, Sten. Replicating Tom is one answer. What do you say, Philippa?
It's always good to just clone people. If we can't clone people, Tom, then I think the idea of best practice, as I said before, that we need to stop just talking about things and reinventing the wheel every time. If something works somewhere, it needs to be rolled out elsewhere and worked out how it can be rolled out and how this best practice is shared throughout different countries so that we can scale up. And I do also think that this idea of PR not presuming that either policymakers or the public think the same way as you and they understand what you're understanding, and that you explain what you're trying to do so that everybody understands it and sees the advantages of it and not just you, because there's lots of presumption and I think that doesn't help move things forward quickly.
Okay. Tom, how many are you now? Are you already being cloned?
I don't know.
What is your?
I think there's a few that uses some of the same motivation tariff that we use. But I think that the use of the meter data, I think that is one of the possibilities for a lot of district heating companies to try and use it to more than just billing. We have had the discussion in this house whether or not we should go from monthly values to daily values, and we couldn't quite see that we needed the daily values. But when we then had the daily values, we found out we could use them easily. And now we are trying to use hourly values as well, and we can see uses of that as well. We can see if it's when the daughter is taking a bath that the high consumption is, or if at a larger house that it's the ventilation system that takes the power when nobody is in the school or office. So I think the uses of the data from the meters, people could use that all over.
Short, Alessandro, and then we continue.
We need more industrial pilots, we need more TOMs, but I think that also means that we need it's a good opportunity for the Danish district heating sector to send their TOMs all around Europe and why not the world. I think we need more ICT standardization. We need more to face the problems of interoperability, for example, with data, with electricity sector, and we need a better, let's say, we need to work also on market simulation, design aspects, and work with the regulators on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's finalize this discussion. Thank you very much to all of the speakers. I think you gave very relevant and interesting input. Now on this side, if you want to receive the report from Tempo or the GPRD report that Sten mentioned or Tom mentioned, the motivation tariff, type in your email address. Let me just point over here. Then you'll receive all the information, and tell us what you tell us that it was a great event or whatever you think about it. But please do that, and we will. And not least, thank you for all we were more than 48 participants when we were most, and it's really great. My next slide will be.
Did ask a question about who's the best person to talk to the public about district heating, and whether you as an industry, how you think it's best to explain what you're doing, and who would you like to talk about district heating? Is it local? Is it mayors? Is it local authorities? Is it national government? Where do you see that kind of, or do you see yourselves as being the link to the public?
Well, I think we used to chat with other district heating companies, also in the UK and in Holland and in Germany. But I think that our government could also be a very good pipeline to other countries, because the planning in district heating in Denmark has been going on since the 70s. So there's a lot of knowledge there as well on how to plan for district heating. And I heard that in Germany they actually started a process where they begin to plan areas like we have done in Denmark. I think that is very nice, and probably also something that can change going from gas to district heating.
And is the project in Germany being run in conjunction with members of the Danish government, or?
Yes, I think I've been down there and talked about it, but I think also that the Danish embassy and the Danish state has been a large part of it. They made some kind of agreement that Denmark should help Germany going into district heating. And I think that the thing that has been told has made them change, so they actually go into planning the areas like we have done in Denmark.
Okay, Tom, I might send you an email afterwards to follow up on that, if that's okay.
Yeah, the Danish Trade Council has a special cooperation, as Tom mentioned, with North Rhine-Westphalia and with Baden-Württemberg in Germany. And I think there are three or four people from the Danish Foreign Ministry and from the Danish Energy Agency that works with developing district heating in Germany.
Okay, well, I'll probably send you an email, because it'd be interesting to follow up that, because a lot of what we're hearing out of Germany at the moment is the push for gas. And so I think it will be interesting to try and pull out some other stories to show other projects that are going on in terms of decarbonising heating.
Yeah, we can put you in contact with the head of the utility at the trial.
If I should comment on it, it's a
Brilliant,
really interesting development. I think what you're referring to, Tom, is the new legislation in Baden-Württemberg. In Baden-Württemberg, they have 1,100 municipalities. 1,100, that's quite a lot. But they have actually said to the 100 largest, 110, I can't remember, largest municipalities, that now you have to go ahead and do some proper heat planning. And that is a completely new situation. I also see that if this should only come from bottom up, if it's only local authorities or consumer groups that wants district heating, and the national government have not given, or at least the regional government, have not given a platform on which this can happen, it will be really, really difficult because they will be met with so many arguments against it. And therefore, some kind of push, forced, we need to see some heat plans. Now they're discussing, then heat plans are really important. And now they're discussing how do we make these plans comparable? How do we make sure that they actually look at the things they should look at? And there they're working closely together with the Danish Energy Agency, who have what they call the district heating assessment tool. We can share a link to that later in this. So from top, somebody have to give direction, and things then must happen locally. Claude, I think you had a question, but I can't activate you. Can you please type your questions, maybe? Any other comments? Tom is typing something. Okay. I'll leave the chat open for a while more, but if there's no specific questions from any of the 25 remaining participants here, go ahead. Then I think I'll close down the speaking part of it and just leave the chat open. Well, Hans Wagner too, you're most welcome. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon, Marianne. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you very much. Chat is open for a while, and go on talking if you need to. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.